Oh, hello and welcome back, and thank you so much for clicking on my video. In today's episode, what we're going to be doing is trying to climb the rating ladder on chess.com because I don't play on chess.com that often, and if you see, let me move, 1835, apologies. And so what we're going for is a structure that I am somewhat similar to. If you've watched more than a few of my videos, you see that I go for the impenetrable pawn pyramid, where we trade off the light square bishop because we have so many pawns on light squares. We go for this pawn push so that we have a natural development square for my knight. If he takes, we develop with the bishop. If he doesn't take, we just develop the knight. If he takes the knight, I still think that we have to just take back. And what did that really accomplish? Oh, did it win a pawn? I think we can just play this, and he takes. I lose the right to castle. I think I'm okay with just taking here. If he takes back this way, we get a check. Not 100% sure what he was going for there, but I have a bishop for a knight, so that is all I know. So we're going to just go ahead and develop a piece. My king is in the middle of the board. We get hit with a check. We will be stepping back, then probably challenging that knight, because I just don't want this knight living on this square. So we're going to take a little step back. It looks like we're rushing into the endgame with 9 minutes each on the board. We will just put my king back to where he was, and we have our first imbalance in the position. I have yet to develop my bishop, and I have the option of doubling his pawns. What that does is it makes these weaknesses and makes this weak. So we'll be going into a rook and pawn endgame where I feel like my king is more active, close to coming to the center. So if we even trade off one pair of rooks, I think we're good to go. Or, if I don't, he's kind of going for this. So I think we're just going to go for this. It made a clear and identifiable weakness in the position. Right now, this rook is already on the semi-open file, so I'll bring this rook all the way over to attack this pawn. And he might actually have a difficult time defending this pawn, because I'm going to step forward. He can go here and then here, but then I'm just really applying pressure. Like, I could step over and be attacking all of this stuff. So that is why I trade the bishop. You never want to trade the bishop for a knight if there's not like an advantageous or a very specific reason, and this was a specific reason. We are going into a rook and pawn endgame where I'm the one applying pressure, and if ever he is to play this move, are you ready for this? We step over. If he defends like so, we can simply take this pawn, and if he takes back, it's checkmate. So it took 1 minute and 30 seconds against this 1813 to find our first tactic. There might have been another one that I missed, but we're just going to go for this. If he takes back, it's essentially checkmate, so you can't take, and you could push, but I'm just going to take back. So he's just a pawn down. He is just a pawn down. He can't. Let me think about this for a second. Did I just get hit right back with a tactic? My my rook is hanging. But so is this pawn. And if I try and do anything, then he just takes and it's not checkmate anymore. Here, here, here. Probably he takes and I step in, and I feel like I'm still the one applying pressure. So we're just going to go for this. We're just going to go for this. We step in like so to defend this pawn. If he takes, I even might take with the king. But he's got easy access to attack all of these pawns over here. Every single pawn he can attack. Boom, boom, boom. Uno, dos, tres. And so if he takes, do I take with the rook? I feel like my rook is pretty gosh darn active here. So if I take and he attacks this pawn, I push. If he attacks this pawn, I push. If he attacks this pawn... Okay, here. I think we're just going to go for it. And like I mentioned earlier, we made some weaknesses in the position. And so Does this make any sense? If he takes, I just take back. But that really, this pawn push really limited his options for attacking my weaknesses. So now the rook can no longer access these two squares to attack these two pawns. So I feel actually really good about this pawn push. He got out of the back rank checkmate ideas, but I might have even pushed this instead. And so, what if I just straight up bring my king? Like, just boom. You go here, I push here. If you go back here, I push here. If you go here, I come up. I think we're going to maybe go for this. King activity overall. So yes, he's attacking this pawn. For one, I could unactivate my rook, but I really like blockading this pawn. So I think we could just push forward. Then he goes back and we push again. If he attacks here, I'm really getting ready to just bring my king, and then this pawn, everything makes a lot of sense. So I think we're just going to push this pawn. Still got 6 minutes on the clock, so essentially time is really not going to be of the essence. If I go this way and he attacks here, then here, then here, I can step back and guard it. But then he's got the push. But you know what? I really like the idea of just coming in and mopping up these pawns. So I think this move is slightly more versatile. I'm like defending the rook and I'm ready to step over here if need be. But now I'm ready to come in. I can also give this check. So if this happens, I can force the rook trade. So if he does go for this, I'm just coming in. So I'm just going for these pawns. Straight up. And I have blockaded this, so there's no amazing tactics. And like I had just mentioned, you want to trade, you are absolutely insane. I don't think I even need to think about this for a second. I can simply take, and then I'm touching this pawn. So it ruins his pawn structure. He literally does not have a single pawn in the position that is not weak. So now we have transitioned from trading my bishop for the knight to create the weaknesses to trading the rooks to make way more identifiable weaknesses. So pretty much I can grab this. All we need to be worried about is his king getting in, like behind my pawns, but I'm really just not convinced, because if I win this pawn at any point, this becomes a passed pawn. So I think we're going to be okay with just grabbing this. He can step in, yes. But now this is an outside passed pawn. So I think we're going to step in. If he goes for this, I mean, we just take, right? If you take here, I take your pawn. And then I just distract you with my outside pawn and you're just completely lost. So grabbing this is not equal. It is not equal at all. For one, I can kind of just challenge that, but I mean, I'm fairly confident that just pushing this makes a whole lot of sense. If he ever is to grab this, I grab his pawn. And so I didn't have to think too incredibly hard here, but we're definitely going for this. He's never going to stop my passed pawn. He has to get so deep into the position. But what I'm a little bit worried about is him grabbing all of these pawns. So for one, I can just try to trade everything off. I can bring my king or I can push my pawn. If I push, he essentially has to take, then I take. I mean, I could probably just do this and make a queen, and that's completely winning, like this, 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 but I'll lose a lot of pawns. So I think jumping forward, and I mean, if he takes, then he's only got this one passed pawn, so I think this move kind of just clarifies stuff. Hanging two pawns, hanging two pawns, I mean, I've thought about this enough. I think it's time that we really start bringing this. And I'm fairly convinced. Like, what if I go here, 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 here? I think bringing my king actually makes sense, because I'm going to have all the time in the world to make this queen. So I kind of like the idea of just stepping in. He'll go for this, I go for this, he goes for this. Then I step in, he'll step here, but then I step over and I just kind of stop this pawn. So we're going to bring the king. I'm not 100% sure if I need to do this. I can probably just make the queen and we're good to go. We're going to step in here. If he pushes this pawn, then we start pushing. Okay. We're going to just start pushing. And I mean, he's definitely going to get this, but he's not... Let's think about this for a second. Got 2 minutes and 38 seconds to not draw this position. I think stepping in and touching the pawn puts him in a Zook's Swan situation or whatever, where these squares are cut off, so his only legal move is to step away from the pawn where I can grab. So we step in, touching his last pawn, and he has to resign because what else is he going to do in this position? He has to step away from the pawn. Now, going back, I mean, that was a pretty simple, straightforward game of chess, just like making some weaknesses in the enemy's position and winning in the endgame. So, fairly confident this was very accurate. Maybe that little stumble here in the opening wasn't so great, but straight up in this position, giving up the bishop, kaboom, for this ruined pawn structure, we have a tactic, but even after this, I feel like my pieces are just more active. My rook is doing stuff, I'm attacking stuff, and these pawns are still super weak. Like, yes, this pawn over here is weak, but not as weak as yours because your king is very far away from actually doing anything, okay? My king is close to eating these pawns. Your king is nowhere close to eating my pawn. So let's check it with the computer, see how accurate it was, and I'll see you over there. And here we are in the analysis, and I'm quite proud of that game, and I'm going to be able to explain every move to you in great detail because I played like all the best moves. That was a near perfect game of chess. It was not like a crazy attacking game or anything, but simply making the right trades into an advantageous situation. And so, before we get started, take a look at this graph. Now, I try to stress the importance of endgame techniques in every single one of my videos because look in the opening. Ain't nothing important happening. The middle game, ain't nothing important happening. One move into the end game, important stuff is happening, okay? So literally just not making blunders in the opening and the middle game, memorizing moves doesn't always work, and I have a perfect example of this because I have had this exact opening before and played the right move. So 96% accurate, 2 inaccuracies. We don't got to talk about the opponent. We go into a structure that I am very familiar with. We trade off the light square bishops, like I alluded to in the video. We have a lot of pawns on light squares, so getting rid of our light square bishop makes a lot of sense because our dark square bishop is the one that's like gonna be able to move all through the pawn structure. Does that make sense? You have all of like these like through the pawn structure moves, okay? The light square bishop doesn't have any of those moves. Imagine if the bishop was here. He's locked forever, or here, locked forever. So that's why you trade the light square bishop, and that is how you know which bishop sucks and which bishop is good. So like our opponent right here, a lot of pawns on dark squares. His dark square bishop is not so great. Even though it's on the outside of the pawn chain, still it's not so great. My dark square is bishoping. It's more of a bishop. It's a better bishop because whatever. So long story short, I don't want to trade my good bishop for his bad bishop, because if we trade everything else in the position, my bishop's going to be able to attack his pawns and his bishop won't be able to attack my pawns, and my bishop is going to be able to move around the board easier than his. I hope that was, you know, a good explanation of all of those moves. Now, in this position right here, I have literally had this position and I have played this move. That is the best move because it shuts down the ideas of this check. And he first has to move the queen somewhere, then you grab the bishop. It's not actually like that much better. Like if you look at it's 0.1, and if you just take here, it's 0.5 plus 0.5, so it's definitely not the best move. That is one of my 2 inaccuracies of the game. And so that's what I'm saying. Studying opening theory and stuff doesn't matter because I have memorized this and played it before in a game. And in this one, I just snap captured back and completely forgot and got hit with this check. It's not really the end of the world because trading the queens to prevent your opponent's king from castling is normally not a good reason to trade the queens. Because without the queens on the board, the king in the middle is actually maybe a good thing. So trading the queens to put my king one step closer to the center isn't a good idea. It's only a good idea to trade like a bishop for a bishop and make the king step in when you still have the queens hidden somewhere on the board, because then the king is more exposed. But without the queens, 2 knights and some rooks are not powerful enough to actually do any problem with my king being on d7. So he hits us with a check. We step back to guard the pawn. I make a backwards retreating move. It's not an inaccuracy, but it's not the best. But I felt like his knight in the middle of the board is super strong, and I just wanted to trade it. Knight for a knight, and then I have a knight versus bishop situation. So we trade. My king goes back to the middle of the board, and now we have traded even one more set of knights. So being on this square is getting better because I'm more active. And in the end game, the more stuff that trades, my king like arriving here or like, I don't know, anywhere in the middle of the board is a good idea. And now I am one step closer to the middle of the board. And so he plays the first blunder, one move into the end game. One move into the end game, and he plays a blunder, okay? The reason for this is it undermines the defense of this pawn. And in so doing that, it puts the pawn on the semi-open file that my rook can easily access, and these pawns are weak as well. 4 minutes in, we're chilling. Okay, the reason I'm putting this rook, kaboom, this rook goes here because this rook kind of already has a job. These are the 2 semi-open files in the position, so the rooks on both of those files is what you need to do. Okay, if I go here, then it becomes hard for me to put a rook on this semi-open file. So that is why this rook. Sometimes when you're deciding like which rook goes where, so even in this position, like playing this, then this would be like, I don't know how to say it. This rook covering here and then this rook going here would make sense. One other rule of thumb is generally you want to match your opponent's rooks. So like if the rook is on this file, you generally want your rook on this file, or his rook is on this file, you want your rook on this file. So that way when the files open up, you claim the open file at the same time as your opponent instead of like, I don't know how to explain it. So say this pawn goes here, I have this file, okay? So him having his rook on this file, so if this pawn capture does take place, then the rooks see each other and we're fighting over the file, not I already have the file. I hope I explained that well. We get active with the rook, we step over, and then this is just a very common tactic, a motif that happens in so many games of chess, and I win so many games of chess simply because of these types of pawn structures. Right now, the rooks are the only thing that defend each other. Same here. Like, yes, the king is defending this one, but generally the rooks are defending each other, your rooks are defending each other, so if I do something else with my rook, this guy becomes a little bit less secure, and this one is completely unsecure. Same situation here. If he moves this rook all of a sudden becomes undefended, and there is this simple tactic. Just look at this and look for it in your games. And the more times that you catch it, and the more times that it happens in games, the better you'll get at capturing it. I probably took like I probably saw this before he even played the move, but you simply capture. He can't capture back because it's checkmate. And pawns capture opening files. Whenever a pawn captures, it opens the file, regardless of which way that it goes. And so that is just how the pawns capture. So this is so common. This literally is such a common thing that happens in endgames. And this is a really simple version. You can't take back because it's checkmate. Even if it's not checkmate, I'm still going to win your rook with check. Okay? So we grab this. He gets a little bit of activity. What I'm supposed to do here is get super active with this rook. Because yes, you hit me with this check, but I step in, you take, I take, but then I'm going to win this pawn no matter what. And I'm behind this pawn. So just getting active is what I needed to do, but this move is just as good. It's a 0.2 difference. So this feels safer. We step forward, we trade. Now my king is close to getting into the position. Like I was mentioning before, the less pieces on the board, the king more towards the center is a good thing. His king is not active. He still needs to move a pawn to even bring the king, and he's got a lot of moves before he can get to the center of the board. And my king is like pretty close to doing things. So now I have actually identifiable weaknesses and targets in the position. You can't defend this pawn with the rook unless you make all of these moves, which is hard to do. Actually, it's really not that hard to do. It is hard to do. If you step back, then I win this and I'm threatening this. So the rook has to stay here guarding this, and my king is getting ready to just gobble up these lonely pawns on the side of the board. So my pawn was attacked. We push. We bring the king. We go here, and now he goes for a rook trade. It's maybe out of desperation. I'm not 100% sure what the idea was here, but he's already got a lot of weak pawns on this side of the board, and now he's got weak pawns on this side of the board. Just look at my pawn structure, how beautiful it is, and look at his pawn structure. Literally none of his pawns can defend other pawns, and the job of pawns is to defend pawns. That is literally what pawns are supposed to do. Okay, and other pieces and stuff like that, but these pawns are... This is the ugliest pawn structure you could ever imagine. And if you see, we have equal material, but -5 for white, because his endgame is impossible to defend all of the pawns. Okay, so I take the pawn, I step in to touch this pawn, we trade here, and we're basically in a situation where if he grabs, I grab, and this endgame is a little bit important. I go ahead and play the best move because I'm really good at chess, and I realize if he takes here, I take this, and my pawn is really close to becoming a queen. He comes in, and I grab this pawn. Now, I go for some clarification because, for one, I can just bring my king and win his pawns like this. So we don't even need to care about my pawns. Like, as long as my king can grab these 2 pawns, he can go ahead and grab every single one of my pawns. And I don't care because I have an outside passed pawn. So it's a 4-on-2, but that means you got to play 4 moves capturing all of these pawns. And I only need 4 moves to make a queen. So I don't know if that's a good way to look at this, but my king can just get in and win your pawns. Like, if you're going to come back and win my pawns, then I'm going to win your pawns. And so this is easier, I suppose. It just clarifies what's going on. It's like, I'm basically going to give up these 3 pawns for this pawn, and I'm cool with it because I know that I'm going to make a queen. So we trade, and I'm doing this little maneuver because it kind of forces all of, I explained it in the video, and that was like 5 minutes ago, so I don't need to explain it again, but we're basically just going for the queen. We get the queen. There's a lot of different things I can do. I can, for one, just cut the king off and make him play something like this. But bringing the king is always a good idea. If the enemy's king ever steps away from the defense of this square, then my queen will go there. And like so, here's an example. We do this. The queen now blocks the promotion square of the pawn, so he will never be turning this into a queen. And so sometimes if you have low time, literally just put your queen there, and you'll figure out how to get this with the king. But now the king cannot get close enough to like dislodge your queen, and the pawn will never promote and turn into a queen. So that's just one thing you should know about endgames. Put the queen on the square that the enemy's pawn wants to promote to. But we step in, and now he is in Zugzwang, where he has to step away from the pawn. He only has 1 legal move. Be careful not to get checkmates in positions like this, but he has to step away from the pawn because he has no other, he can't push the pawn, he can't go here, he can't go here, he can't go here, so he has to go here, and when he does, I'm grabbing the pawn, and then that is a wrap. You are not winning this game of chess, my friend. I'm sorry for doing that to you. It was a slow and steady, gradual, decrease in, his position just slowly fell apart. It wasn't like an attacking game of chess. And if we look, like, we're almost equal material. Like, I had a pass pawn, you had a pass pawn, but it's not about material in those. It's about who's getting the queen first, because that changes everything. So thank you so much for watching my video. Sorry if that explanation was longer than it needed to be. The game was probably like 10 minutes long, and the explanation was like 10 minutes long. So either way, I love you. I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe, please. Bye.